Just a few minutes ago, the Prime Minister says that Alberta MP Matt Jeneroux has joined the Liberal Party. CBC's chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton joins me now live with this. So, Rosemary, thank you for being here with us. We understand the Conservative MP, there had been rumours back in November that he could cross the floor. Now it is confirmed he will be doing that.
Yeah, so in November, when Chris d'Entremont, you remember, crossed the floor to the Liberals, there was conversations happening that there were other MPs in the mix, and his name was certainly one of them that was mentioned. Remember, he is an MP from Alberta, from the Edmonton area, and in November, he decided to step away entirely from politics, announcing that he would resign sometime in the spring. And he suggested that it was because he wanted to spend more time with his family. He said at the time to our reporters that there had been no coercion on the part of Conservatives to make sure that he stayed inside the party. In fact, he put out a press release saying that he admired the party and still had many friends inside the caucus. Well, I guess a couple months away from Ottawa, because he hasn't been present here physically, and he has had other conversations with the Prime Minister. Not only is he crossing the floor to the Liberal caucus, obviously staying on as an MP, but Mark Carney also in his social media post says that he will be a new special advisor on economic and security partnerships, that he will contribute to strengthening Canada's alliances and trade partnerships, and that he will play that role inside the caucus. In the case of the other two gentlemen who have crossed the floor, Michael Ma and Chris d'Entremont, there was nothing given to them to entice them to go to the Liberals. But in this case, obviously, there has been some sort of negotiation about what role Mr. Jeneroux could play inside the Liberal caucus. And while he's not in cabinet or has a senior job like that, he is going to do some sort of advisory work for the Prime Minister on economy and security. Obviously, we have not reached out to Matt Jeneroux yet, but we will do so. This means, of course, that this brings the Liberals ever closer to their sought majority. They have a couple of by-elections, 3 by-elections that need to be called in the next couple of weeks, with the departure of Bill Blair, Chrystia Freeland, and of course, the riding of Terrebonne, where the Supreme Court said that another by-election had to happen. So there's a lot of moving parts in terms of whether they can get to that majority, but certainly taking another Conservative from Pierre Poilievre's team, although he was now no longer a Conservative, is also a blow to Pierre Poilievre. There was a real sense, RT, within the Conservative caucus that this had kind of settled down, that there would be no more floor crossing. And while I suppose technically it isn't, given that Matt Jeneroux said he was going to resign, this will raise questions for Pierre Poilievre's leadership moving forward.
And of course, we know, no doubt, during the course of the leadership review, as you touched on, there was overwhelming support within the party for Pierre Poilievre. But as you mentioned there, of course, it does raise questions. You know, I'm looking at the statement from Matt Jeneroux, and as we look at sort of the history of what we've seen from November to the next few months to now, he says in that statement, like so many families across Canada over the holidays and since, my family has had several conversations around the kitchen table about how we can best be there for each other and stand up for the country. And further down in the statement, he says, after further reflection, and I'm bringing this up because there was so much criticism for the other MPs who had crossed the floor. He said, after further reflection with my family and conversations with colleagues and constituents, I will be continuing to serve Parliament, but working for Prime Minister Mark Carney. And that really touches on, especially, I believe, during Michael Ma, there was a lot of criticism for the floor crossing and how these MPs sold themselves during the course of the election and then to cross the floor.
Yeah, I mean, that is always the criticism with floor crossing. But I should say, I don't know that we've seen it in these kinds of numbers, frankly, in my memory anyway. And I think what you are seeing and hearing from all of these gentlemen who have made this decision is a couple of things. Either criticism of Pierre Poilievre's leadership style and how he was approaching caucus, or a desire to contribute to the moment that Canada is facing. And certainly the statement that you just read there from Matt Jeneroux, and thank you for reading it because I don't have it yet, certainly it speaks to that. There are other people, other Conservatives I've spoken to who don't intend to cross the floor, but who do appreciate some of the things that this Prime Minister is doing and want to in some way make sure that Canada can defend itself in this moment. So I'm frankly not surprised that Mr. Jeneroux would point to those issues. He also is, yes, he's an Alberta MP, but he is from the Edmonton riding, which tends to be, slightly more progressive versus other more rural ridings in Alberta. So I would imagine there's a lot of things that that work for him inside the Liberal Party. Now, whether that means that Albertans will vote for Mr. Jeneroux another time, I don't know. But that's sort of the risk that these MPs take, that they join the government, they cross the floor, in this case, for a title and a role, and then they will have to test whether voters are in favor of the decision that they made or not. I mean, when this happened before Christmas, Pierre Poilievre and his deputy leaders were very critical of these MPs and called out their hypocrisy for getting elected on one thing and then joining the Liberal caucus. Mm-hmm. But it is something that is allowed within our parliamentary system, and Conservatives have benefited from it in the past. I'm not sure, again, though, that we have seen 3 MPs, although Matt Jeneroux was about to resign, leave a caucus to join the government. And certainly that speaks to the moment we're in, but I think it will also raise some questions about whether Mr. Poilievre has sort of full control of what's going on in caucus. I would imagine today Conservatives, I'm sure I've already got some messages, will say, well, he wasn't with us anymore. He had essentially already left, so this is no reflection on Mr. Poilievre's leadership. And perhaps it isn't, but it will be a difficult day for him today.
Taking a look at what's breaking along with our conversation here, we understand that Matt Jeneroux will meet with the Prime Minister. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe that they will be meeting. So that is of note. Of course, we'll have coverage of that. I also wanted to ask you, I love this valuable context and insight we get from you. And that is that we know there's the departure of Bill Blair, Chrystia Freeland. So in terms of that numbers game, when it comes to the minority government right now, how does this sort of balance the books, so to speak?
Yeah, well, so I'm not really sure where we are with the numbers right now, frankly, because they were up 2, obviously, with Chris d'Entremont and Michael Ma, but they have since seen 2 departures. So, I don't know that they're ahead of the game overall. Now, we would expect Bill Blair's riding and Chrystia Freeland's riding to remain Liberal. It would be very surprising to me if that went a different way. But to have another MP, that's getting them closer to the majority that they needed. And I will also say that having an Alberta MP play a role like this inside your caucus, work with government, is also very beneficial politically for the Prime Minister right now. He has a good relationship with Premier Smith, but he's also under some pressure, right, to deliver some things to Alberta, whether it be a pipeline or others. So to have someone who also represents the province and can maybe be an interlocutor in that way, I think is politically super valuable. Mr. Jeneroux has played those kinds of roles in committees and in critic roles. So, in some ways that also makes sense for the Prime Minister.
Rosie, I want to thank you for this. And
Sure.
Just a note here, too, we know that the Prime Minister will be meeting with the MP in Edmonton itself, because today he's got events on the West Coast in Richmond and Vancouver, BC. So that is a note for our viewers. We'll have coverage of that and possibly another appearance from Rosemary Barton. Thank you for all of this. That's the CBC's Chief Political Correspondent, Rosemary Barton, in Ottawa.